So I know I said last week that the point of this final time together was to kind of wrap all this up and put a bow on it. And so I'll say that with the caveat that I'm terrible at wrapping gifts. Give me a bag and some tissue paper, and I'd much prefer to do that than all the folds and the tape, and it just really looks like a train wreck when I wrap gifts sometimes. So not that that's what this is going to be, but I do want to forefront that if we jump around a little bit, there's a reason for that. And part of that reason is that we've, for 6 weeks, talked about imagination, talked about theology, talked about physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. And to wrap all that up in about 45 minutes is pretty. There we go. All right. See? Wrapping up in a pretty package, bows, tape. Doesn't always work like you think it's going to work. All right, so part of what I want to talk about today is, one, where are we entering? What time are we entering together? So we're moving into a stage of living apart during a pandemic to figuring out what life together looks like in an endemic. Okay, the virus is not going to go anywhere. It's not leaving us, it's not moving away from us, it's not dissolving miraculously. Thankfully, we've had the technology and the tools and the medical faculties to be able to build additional human bodily capacity to withstand some of the damaging effects of the virus. We have vaccines, we have antivirals, we have antibody treatments. We have a lot of things now that can help, assuming we take part in what can be helpful. And that's not an assumption we can always make for everybody. And we also have to be mindful of those who can't partake in some of the treatments, whether for their own health reasons, their own immunocompromised bodies, or other things like that. And so we're entering a time where being thoughtful about what it means to be us, not being thoughtful about what it means to be me, but being thoughtful about what it means to be us matters. And so being able to think through, to understand when cities get into hotspots. We have this, it's interesting if you read the research on it, that places become hotspots for about 2 months and then it kind of wanes and we don't know why. And then it flares back up again and we don't know why. And so there's these ebbs and flows, what we might call seasons, where we just have to be thoughtful and more careful. And there's going to be seasons where we can be more active and be more together in some ways. So our goal or our hope in those places is to be smart. And that's hard. I don't underestimate the amount of energy that it takes to be smart all the time. Our bodies aren't built to be smart all the time. They're built for shortcuts. They're built to conserve energy so that we can protect ourselves from threats in our environment. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, we say, we're built for survival and procreation, and that's pretty much it. That's what our bodies were meant to do. Thankfully, evolutionary biologists have come a little further than those more animalistic statements, again, to talk about things like cognition and talk about things like culture and cooperation. A really nice kind of trinity of C's: cognition, cooperation, culture. Things that evolutionarily our bodies need, our minds need to survive. And even more so, thrive in the places that are meaningful and valuable to us. And so we're entering a new season. We're entering a big season among small seasons. And so, again, being smart and being thoughtful and moving from vigilance, which is there's always a threat trying to get me, to that more thoughtful way of being together is no easy task. And I think some of the things that we have to pay attention to as we kind of think about this integrated idea of well-being are things like grief and trauma. There's been a lot written about the collective grief that we've experienced over the last 20 or so months. And similarly, for some, the collective trauma. What we know about trauma is that when we have really egregious experiences, about 10 to 20-ish% will form a post-traumatic stress response. That means they will have really elevated senses of vigilance and awareness about the world around them. And what I understand of grief and trauma, and what I hope to kind of convey to you today, is that they are processes, they are not identities. You are not an aggrieved person. You are a person dealing with a grief process. You are not a traumatized person. You're a person who's dealing with traumatic situations. We are people first. And external things impact the extent to which we can be the people we're called to be. And so that capacity, to some extent, to begin to think about how it is we're going to relate to external circumstances and their impact on us as people becomes a really important distinction to the feeling of being victimized by a virus who has not a care in the world who you are or what you are. It just does what it is evolutionarily supposed to do, which is replicate. Consequences be damned. And so it becomes important to us to think and to reflect and to imagine what life together looks like and means as we take steps forward. So when we think about grief and trauma as processes, what we can do is we can think about the constellation of emotions that come with grief. There's anger, there's joy, there's sadness, there's hope, there's relief, there's frustration. All of those things are a part of a grief process. We can simultaneously be sad that something died or was taken away from us, and be joyful that whatever pain was in that situation is gone as well. When I talk with families who are coming into funerals, they feel torn sometimes between the relief that the person who died is no longer in pain and they don't have to see and watch that, and the sadness that they're gone as well. It's okay to have more than one emotion. And the process, as I talk about it when I teach grief and when I work with folks in grief, grief is a backpack that we carry with us wherever we go. It's just, get on in the morning and it's something that we put on. And some days it's a really heavy backpack and our shoulders are tired. And some days it's a really light backpack and it's not too hard to carry. What's inside it doesn't change. What changes is our capacity to carry it. our ability to shift it from shoulder to shoulder or shift its weight in our midst. And that takes practice. It takes not ignoring grief. It takes not ignoring trauma. It takes work. It takes a willingness to say, okay, today's not as good a day. What do I need to carry this with me today? And every once in a while, it just feels like somebody drops a stone in the middle of our backpack. In the middle of our day, unbeknownst to us, unknown why, you see a flower on the side of the road and it reminds you of a person. You see an invitation to a party and it reminds you of before COVID. And all the grief that you have missed out, all the things that you've missed out just wash over like a wave or sit heavily in that backpack. And our only hope is to, in some ways, understand what it is we miss. It's not to say, I'm just going to stomach it. I'm just going to wear the heaviness. It's what's making this so heavy right now? What is it that I'm experiencing that is causing me this pause, this weight, this heft that I'm experiencing right now? And so in our collective grief, it's not just an individual thing we carry, communities carry it as well. Because communities have life, they have stories. Think back to the Christmas services last year. What was your grief at not being able to come and sit at a candlelight service or hear children sing in the same way that you did before, or walk up and put a can, or see the living nativity, or see all of those things? That's going to come back this year. And it's not because of anything that's going on here or there. It's going to be because there's limits to what we can continue to do. And those memories flood sometimes. And when the memories flood, we just need to understand that, okay, well, this is coming. What do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? Where do I need to reach out in order to bear this weight more meaningfully, thoughtfully, and with greater capacity? Similar with post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is a process. It's work. It's how we deal with the feelings of disruption that we've experienced in our lives. And not just the feelings, but the experiences of those disruptions as well, and how we are going to carry that story meaningfully. Because willingly or not, it's coming with us. Period. Stop. End of sentence. It's coming with us. And it takes an integrated sense of well-being, a physical wellness, a mental wellness, a social wellness, a spiritual wellness, to carry those things with as great a possibility as we can in particular moments in our lives. All right, so enough of the sad stuff, the hard stuff. This is really, I'm not saying this is easy for anybody. It's not easy for me. I've told you. I have my weeks out of the month where I don't know what to call it other than COVID PMS. It just hits me and I'm a terrible person. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. And I can feel it coming. I can feel the levels of tolerance lower for me at times. And I do my best to mitigate, but Elizabeth can tell you I kind of suck at it sometimes. But it happens. And I've gotten it down from where it's a full week to about 2 days that I'm really upset. And that's taken hard work. And so let's talk about what some of that work can be and what some of that work can look like. So there's a couple things I think we can do. And the most simple of those things, at least the most simple I think for people who live a Presbyterian life, is that we can create a rule. So I'll tell you, around the end of June, I'm an avid podcast listener. And for whatever reason, the podcasts that I was listening to at the time, all kind of coalesced around this idea of cold tubs. I don't know if you've seen or heard of this, but a cold tub is when you just basically go sit in freezing cold water, and it kind of shocks your body in those spaces. Well, I live in a Park Hill little bungalow. We don't have room for a cold tub, so I didn't rush out and buy a cold tub. But what I did was I created a rule, and I said that from Monday through Friday, for the last 30 seconds of every shower that I take, I'm going to put on the coldest water that I can stand. And what it does is, apparently, cold water is supposed to build some resilience in your body and how it responds to stress in the environment. As one person put it in one of the podcasts, he said, I do a cold tub because it's the most miserable that I'm going to be the entire day, and so everything else is just going to be a bonus after that. So it's like making your bed to some extent. You got something accomplished. So for Monday through Friday, for the last 30 seconds, I switch that switch in the shower to as cold as I can get it. It's miserable, and it's hard sometimes, especially as the weather's starting to... I don't like cold a whole lot, and so this is a stretch for me. But it's what I would call a 5% stretch. It's 30 seconds out of my day. It's something small. And if I can create a rule around something small and have success at that rule, then that empowers me and builds capacity to create other rules. And those of you who don't like rules, you can talk about them as preconditions. If I do this, then I get this. So, another, in the coaching world that I live in, one of the things that they talk about when we're trying to make change in our lives, one of the coaches talks about something he does for himself, which he gives a friend, $100 and says that if I don't complete these tasks over 30 days, you are to give this money to this organization, which he hates. He hates the organization with a passion. And so if he doesn't reach his goal, the friend donates to something he dislikes. And it's a self-motivating thing to some extent to set it in that way, to say, okay, well, I've got to go do this now. But, similar preconditions are, if you love listening to podcasts or you love listening to sermons from Sunday and you can't make it to church, then, I'm only going to listen to sermons while I walk. I'm setting a precondition that I have to be moving when I'm doing something that I enjoy. Before I leave work for the day, I'm going to reach out to one friend. And I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to check in. Setting a precondition, a small rule. And this comes out in part through a lot of research. I put a sheet over there that you can take with you when you go that kind of wraps, as much as I can, everything up that we've been talking about. And one of the quotes at the very top of that is from James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits. And the quote simply reads that we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So when we're struggling, when things are tough, if our systems are low, we fall to them. We don't reach and stretch. What we do is we build. We build additional capacity. By setting a small rule, it sets my body up to be awake and alive, and trust me, I breathe more in that 30 seconds than I've ever breathed the entire day, I feel like sometimes. But that small rule tells me, okay, I can do something that's a little bit hard. What's the next rule? What's the next precondition? What's the next step that I need to take? And the lofty goals as I turn 50 this year is I don't want to feel 50. Whatever, I don't even know what 50 feels like because I've only been it for like 2 months. But I don't want to feel what everybody else thinks 50 feels like. I want to have decent physical health. I want to have good mental health, good spiritual health. I want to have good social health. And it may not seem like it, but 30 seconds in a really cold shower is my first step towards that kind of well-being. And setting the small rule changes the story that I'm powerless to change, which is a lot of what we've experienced over the last 18 months, is just an abject powerlessness. And when we feel powerless, it becomes hopeless. And when it feels hopeless, we become helpless. And when we're helpless, we don't reach out. We don't ask. We don't seek the support we need. And we isolate, is what we do. And isolation, as we talked about last week, increases inflammatory disease. It accelerates aging, causes heart issues over time. We are built to be together. We are built to support one another. We are built for social, cooperative, collaborative, communal things. And we've been told for 18 months that people are dangerous. People are petri dishes, just waiting to explode their viral loads all over you. And so, beginning to reclaim a little bit of power, reclaim a tiny bit of control. Because we can do simple, hard things. We can do complex, hard things too, but it's easier if we start by doing simple, hard things. You know, the second rule for me is that I'll at least reach out to one person by text during the week. A friend, not a business thing, not a collaboration thing, just a friend to check in. And I feel capable of doing that goal. Again, I told you I'm an introvert. 3 friends max is about all I need. I don't want them to respond even, really. The rule is to reach out. The rule is to say, the world is about more than just me. And there's other people who are struggling or hurting or isolated or whatever it is. And if I can do that small thing, then so be it. I think we talked a little bit last week about how to make friends as adults. One of the things I ran across in doing some research for that I had no idea about was Oprah's Smile Club. I don't know if you've heard of this. I'd never heard of it before last week. But Oprah had this challenge that you will smile at a stranger every day. That's it. Don't have to have conversation, don't have to, just smile at a stranger. The point being is you don't know what somebody else's day is like. And what is communicated in a simple smile can change somebody's sense of isolation, somebody's sense of loneliness, and it's really easy to do. It's low-hanging fruit. Whether it's on a Zoom call, whether it's just on a walk or sometimes if you're wearing a mask, it's kind of hard in a grocery store. I think somebody tried to early on talk about smizing, which is smiling with your eyes. I don't know how expressive my eyes are, but nobody ever responds with a smize that at least I've seen to this point. But that idea, if we're outdoors, if we're walking around and we see somebody, we just smile. And that's it. There are little simple things, and what we talked about at the very beginning of this is that human beings are infinitely hackable. Our brains change, our brain chemistry changes, our neural pathways change with new habits. And the establishment of those habits reifies positive or negative pathways. It turns that autonomic system pathway into a superhighway, or it calms it down and gives us some off-ramps, some options, rather than only to be in fight or flight all the time. And that's basically what hypervigilance is. Hyper-awareness is living our lives at kind of 90% capacity around that autonomic system being always activated. And that has really, really deleterious effects on our health long term. Our autonomic system is only to be activated for about 15 to 30 seconds at a time, with a roughly 30-minute calm down time after that. Enough time for the blood to redistribute, enough time for the muscles to relax, enough time for digestive system to come back on track. If we're constantly in hyper-awareness and hyper-vigilance, it doesn't shut down, and it causes all sorts of physical problems later in life. Not to mention what's just happening in that particular moment. So the capacity to calm that down. And I want to look at my time here. We're going to do just a simple exercise, and some of this is written on the sheet. But from trauma work, and this is something you can do individually. We're not going to move around. We're not going to talk to anybody. Something that you can just do individually. It comes in part from trauma work, and it comes in part from coaching, and it comes in part from mindfulness work. The most basic way to calm down your autonomic system is to access a physical sense in a present moment. Okay, so we had an active autonomic system, fight or flight thing going. Some of the early kind of trauma work that I was exposed to had this exercise, and this is not the one we're going to do. We'll do something a little bit different, but it was see one, hear one, touch one. So when our memories cascaded into a trauma experience and everything we felt hyper aware, you're supposed to see something in the room and name it. Touch something in the room and name it. Listen for something in the present moment and name it. And what that does is it takes us out of this hyper terrible imagination and puts us in a present moment, which is basically what most of mindfulness work is about. It's about being present in that moment. And so what I want to teach and what I want to do a little bit today is just something really, really simple that I use all the time. And if you've paid attention over the times I've been up here, you've seen me do it. Because I do it when I get anxious. And I'm doing it right now. So what I want you to do is I want you to put two hands together. And right now we'll just concentrate on our index fingers. So close your eyes if that's helpful to you, if that's meaningful to you. But I want you to rub your two fingers together, paying attention to trying to feel the ridges of your fingerprints. Just such close attention that you can feel those ridges rub against one another. And once you've done that, take one hand and take all the fingertips and go down to the base of the palm. I want you to feel temperature, Feel if there's moisture or sweat, but feel all those ridges, those lines in the hand, calluses, cuts, scars, whatever it is. And just pay such attention that you notice every little detail about your hand. Now just take a second and notice your breathing now. How is it different than when you started? What is your breath telling you about your body in this moment? And when you're ready and when you're done, you can stop. Very simple activity that took us 45 seconds. But I hope what you've noticed is that your breathing kind of slowed a tiny bit as you concentrated on your hands. That your mind maybe calmed just a tiny bit. I use this all the time. So the beauty about Zoom calls is nobody can see your hands. So if I'm in an especially anxious session with someone, or I'm in a rough group or something like that, I can use this on that sensation of anxiety, on that sensation of fear, or whatever it is that I'm experiencing, to try to just calm myself for a moment. And all it takes is 30 seconds. Another exercise is to sit quietly for a moment and try to hear the farthest sound that you can hear. And once you've identified that, come back and try to hear the closest sound you can hear. Usually your own breathing in that space. Another one is to pick a book out of the pew in front of you and to focus on a page so intently that you begin to see things and patterns and details that you've never seen before. Again, all of this is to bring us to a sense in a particular moment that is present. And if we practice things like that enough, so when we talk about things like mental fitness or spiritual fitness, if we practice them enough, we go to the gym, we recognize that we feel anxious and we want to just sit after the fact a little bit and kind of get present with that feeling to try to calm it in our body or whatever it is. We have to work those things out. We have to work out. And sometimes it's helpful to have other people to do that with, to hold us accountable, a friend, a colleague. Make it a routine, make it a rule. This is my rule when I get anxious. And I've done it for almost a year now, since I've learned it. And for me, it works. And it's not intrusive, it's not stop, wait, I have to go sit over here and hear really loud things and really soft things. Stop talking. It's, oh no, the conversation's making me anxious. What can I hear really far away? And what can I hear that's really close to bring me back to the present? To calm the fight or flight, the defensiveness that we experience, the idea that we have to defend ourselves in every moment. So just easy little things, little rules. And really what I'm talking about is like a 3 to 5% movement. 30 seconds in a cold shower is not a wholesale physical fitness routine that's going to preserve me well into my 90s. But it's a small rule that takes me 2 or 3% down the road and tells me that when I want to try something a little harder, I've got the capacity to do it. We have to celebrate those small wins. I celebrate my small wins on the weekend with a nice, long, hot, warm shower. I went back and forth this morning of do I do the cold thing before I hop out, or do I just stay warm? And I just decided to stay warm because I knew Monday was coming. And I knew the rule was going to be in effect again. So some of those things are written out on this sheet, and they're right by the door over there on your way out if you didn't grab one on your way in. Please feel free to take one, and if there's extra and you think somebody else could use one, and for those of you who are watching online, we'll try to find a way to get this posted somewhere so that you can have the access to the same material that other folks have access to. I have nothing to hide in this space. And if you've ever worked with me, if you've ever worked with anybody in therapy or in coaching or something like that, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you unwind the patterns and find the one little string that we can start creating a rule around to build new patterns and new stories. So we're getting close to the end of our time here, and the end of this session. We're at 10:15 right now, and I want to offer questions, thoughts, anything that y'all have that you'd like to add to the space that's been helpful to you, meaningful to you, that has connected you or disconnected you, whatever it is that you believe this space needs to hear. It matters.
Good to go. May I take the privilege
You
of
may do whatever you
holding
want.
the microphone? Last week you talked so eloquently about the need for social, and the impact on our health not to have the social connections. I was thinking about the longitudinal study about men and relationships and connections, and those who did well.
Yep.
And those. Can you talk about maybe a gendered challenge for men in connection? I think.
Sure.
I think we wonder about that.
Yeah, so Clover's referring to the Harvard longitudinal study, which I think is 80 years old right now, if I remember correctly. And basically they started following young men, I think about 450 of them at the time, and I think they're like down to about 80 of them or something that's left after this study, maybe even less than that. But what they basically have found is that regardless of economic status, regardless of job status, regardless of marital status or whatever it is, that those men who had close friendships were happier, had better health outcomes, and would self-describe their life as more meaningful. We live in a culture and in a state in particular that has highlighted a bootstrap way of living. If you can't pull yourself up from your bootstraps, something's wrong with you. Dumbest thing we've ever come up with in American culture. Absolute stupidity. Because nobody in this space has created anything by themselves. It is the co-creation of previous stories, if it's something that we've imagined. It's driving on the roads that somebody else built or someone else has paid for in taxes. We can do nothing apart from one another, nor are we meant to. And men in particular, who, and this has been shown time and again in studies, when it comes to cultural messages, we are taught not to be dependent, but to be independent. Biblically speaking, if we want to do the whole Bible thing, and this is a church and we want to do that sometimes, everything in there points to interdependence. Jesus did not start Jesus' ministry and say, I got it. I don't need your help. Yes, I want to surround myself with dumber people so that I feel smart. No. It was a series of collaborative conversations to try to keep figuring out what's the story that people need to hear in order to change their lives. And stories change in relationship. And they stick because we have an interdependence with someone else to help them stick. That $100 that we give to a friend and, donate it to the local, for me, it would be the local Republican Party. If I don't lose 5 pounds by the end, or if I don't walk every day for 30 days, well, damn Skippy, I'm going to walk every day for 30 days because I want the $100 back. But that idea that we need each other. And culturally speaking, it's been a whole lot easier for women than men because there are assumptions about gendered roles related to relationships. And study after study into brain science says that there are no significant differences between males and females. Absolutely none. Brains are brains, minds are minds. And the cultural garbage that we put in is the cultural garbage we put out. So put good stories in. Put good relationships in. Put your energy in spaces that build interdependent worlds. Tell grandsons, sons, cry, connect, hold hands, wear skirt, whatever it is that they need to do in those moments to express who they are so that they can become who God needs them to be. I hope that's
Thank you. That's wonderful.
enough.
What questions might you have at the end of this wonderful series? People?
Maybe we got more of a bow on the box than I thought.
I'm going to turn around. Mary? Oh, are you taking your mask off?
Well, the only thing that I would like to know is whether or not you have recorded this in a way that we can reference it at a later point, if we can go back and hear and see you again.
Yeah, Clover, you know more of that than I do, but
Yes, every session was live streamed, and so it is recorded, and therefore should just be cataloged on our website, I believe, and our Facebook page, that we run them. So this session, I'm looking back there, this session will be released probably later in the day or by tomorrow, I would think. Is that right, John? Online right away. So yes, you can refer people to the video and the content.
yeah. And feel free to reach out and email with questions. If there's something that wasn't covered or something that you don't feel like you want to say in a public space, just shoot me an email. I won't even charge you for the response. I'm kidding. But the point for me is our sense of what community should be is kind of out of whack right now. And it's not through any grave mistakes that we've made, although we've made some of those along the way. Right now, it's because we've forgotten what it means to be together. There's a lot in kind of reflective meditation, monastic-oriented Christianity that talks about human beings and that idea of being with oneself and sitting with oneself. And that's never sat well with me. I think we're human becomings. We're constantly changing, we're constantly adapting. We just don't see it because we like the safety, we like the predictable. But we are constantly becoming, and so are our communities, and so are our relationships. And so be bold and become. Take risks in faith and become. Don't be satisfied if your life is unsatisfying. Find a way to become, because God goes with us. We're entering the season of Advent, and it's all about Emmanuel. And for those who don't know what that Greek word means, it means God with us. Not God apart from us, not God in the sky above us, not God behind us, but God beside us and with us. So go with Emmanuel into this season and come out of the season with Emmanuel and become.
Jason, on behalf of the adult faith formation team and the leadership and the congregants who have benefited from this series immensely, thank you.
Blessings, folks. Take care.
Again, there are sheets of resources, bibliographies, perhaps resources to continue the different topics that Jason has covered over the 7-week series. During Advent, there are different things going on, but I have to say adult faith formation is not offering a series during Advent, but pay attention to different kind of things that will be happening. All right, go in peace.